Buy a 10-screen movie theater and you appear to own the entire experience. You control the building, the seats, the projectors, the employees, the ticket prices, the popcorn machines. You can sell the same seat again and again throughout the day, while Hollywood spends hundreds of millions of dollars making and advertising the movies that bring customers to your door. It sounds like a beautiful business. Except you do not own the one thing everyone actually came to see: the movie. Hollywood supplies the product, takes a significant share of the ticket revenue, decides when major films arrive, and can leave you with weeks of weak releases. Meanwhile, your rent, employees, electricity, and expensive auditoriums remain exactly where they were. And once a show starts with 150 empty seats, you can never sell those seats for that show again. That is the hidden economics of owning a movie theater. It is not really a business built around selling movies. It is a business built around trying to monetize thousands of pieces of capacity before they disappear forever. And that changes how almost every dollar inside the building works. Before selling your first ticket, you need somewhere to show the movie. That sounds obvious until you consider what that means. A multiplex requires large auditoriums, projection systems, sound equipment, seating, HVAC powerful enough to condition enormous enclosed spaces, concession equipment, bathrooms, ticketing systems, fire safety infrastructure, cleaning, maintenance, and substantial electrical capacity. Then comes the property itself. Many major theater operators lease their locations under long-term arrangements. That makes sense when business is good. You avoid buying every building yourself. But a long lease also creates a promise. Whether 3,000 customers come this weekend or 300, the landlord still expects to be paid. AMC's 2025 results illustrate the scale. The company generated about $4.85 billion in total revenue while recording approximately $887 million in rent expense. And rent is only one line. There are wages, utilities, maintenance, insurance, technology, advertising, repairs, and constant reinvestment in auditoriums that customers increasingly compare with giant televisions, streaming services, and comfortable sofas at home. So before the owner makes money, the theater has to feed a very large machine. Naturally, you would assume the ticket pays for that machine. That is where the business becomes strange. Suppose a customer buys a ticket for $15. That does not mean $15 becomes theater revenue that the owner is free to spend. The theater licenses the film from its distributor. Film rental terms vary by title, market, and agreement, so there is no universal percentage that every cinema keeps. But typically, the distributor receives a substantial share of the box office. We can see this clearly inside AMC's actual numbers. In 2025, AMC generated roughly $2.65 billion from admissions. Its film exhibition costs were approximately $1.28 billion. In other words, after the direct cost of obtaining the films, roughly $1.38 billion remained from that enormous admissions business before paying the rest of the theater's expenses. That matters because the ticket counter is producing the largest revenue number in the building without allowing the theater to keep all of it. Now move 20 feet toward the smell of popcorn. AMC generated about $1.67 billion from food and beverages that same year. Far less revenue than tickets. But the direct cost of that food and beverage was only about $327 million. Subtract that, and roughly $1.34 billion remains before the other operating expenses. Think about what just happened. Admissions produced about $2.65 billion in revenue. Food produced only about $1.67 billion. Yet, after their respective direct costs, the amounts remaining were remarkably close, roughly $1.38 billion from admissions and $1.34 billion from food and beverages. That is the real reason theater popcorn can feel absurdly expensive. It is not simply because cinemas discovered that customers enjoy snacks. The economics almost require the concession stand to do heavy lifting. The movie gets someone into the building. The theater then has perhaps 2 or 3 hours to make that visit worth more. Popcorn, soda, candy, premium food, alcohol in some locations, merchandise, a larger screen, a better seat, an online booking fee. The customer thinks they are buying a movie ticket. The operator is trying to increase the economic value of a single visit. And that becomes even more important because of what happens to the seats that nobody buys. Consider a 200-seat auditorium showing a movie at 7 p.m. If only 30 people attend, the remaining 170 seats are not inventory that can be placed back on a shelf. At 7:01, they are effectively gone. The theater cannot sell yesterday's empty seat tomorrow. This makes cinema capacity perishable. Hotels have the same problem with empty rooms. Airlines have it with empty aircraft seats. But theaters have an additional complication. A hotel can advertise its own room. An airline can choose its own route. A movie theater cannot manufacture the blockbuster that fills its auditorium. AMC reported that just 7 major studio distributors were responsible for approximately 83% of its U.S. admissions revenue in 2025. So think about the position of the theater owner. You control the staff. You can clean the lobby better, install recliners, improve the food, change the prices, renovate the bathrooms, build the best cinema in your city. And after doing all of that, if the film slate becomes weak, fewer people may come through the door anyway. This is one of the strangest parts of the business. You own the factory. Someone else largely controls the demand flowing through it. And when that demand drops, the problem does not stop with tickets. It spreads. Fewer moviegoers means fewer admissions. Fewer admissions means fewer opportunities to sell popcorn. That reduces beverage sales, premium format upgrades, and ancillary revenue. But the rent remains. Many employees are still required. The building still needs electricity. The projectors still depreciate. The auditoriums still need cleaning and maintenance. Now each remaining customer effectively has to support a larger share of the fixed cost structure. AMC actually describes this phenomenon in financial terms as lost operating leverage when attendance decreases. The phrase sounds complicated. The idea is not. A theater that costs a large amount merely to exist becomes much more attractive when those costs can be spread across millions of customers. Take the customers away, and the same building becomes heavier. This also explains something that can fool anyone casually looking at a movie theater. A theater can appear incredibly busy and still have mediocre economics. Walk into the lobby on opening Saturday for a major blockbuster, and the place may look unstoppable. Lines at concessions, full parking lot, sold-out premium screens, employees rushing everywhere. But Saturday night is not the business. The business includes Monday afternoon, Wednesday morning, the third weekend of a disappointing release, the month between major films, the auditorium with 12 customers sitting inside a room built for 200. What matters is not whether the theater can fill seats occasionally. It is how productively the entire complex can use its capacity throughout the year. That is why modern chains have spent so much effort upgrading the experience. If they cannot completely control attendance, they can try to increase the value of the people who do attend. A normal seat becomes a recliner. A normal screen becomes IMAX, XD, or another premium large format. A basic concession counter becomes a kitchen or bar. A movie ticket becomes part of a membership. An unused auditorium becomes a place for concerts, anime, sporting events, faith-based programming, classic films, or other special content. Cinemark's recent results show the logic. In 2025, its premium large format screens represented only about 6% of its screens, but generated roughly 14% of its worldwide box office. That is an enormous clue about where theater economics are moving. The answer is not necessarily more seats. It can be more valuable seats. And alternative programming produced about 13% of Cinemark's global box office that year. Again, the goal is the same. Make the screen productive. Because every hour that screen sits economically underused is capacity the operator paid for but failed to monetize. The danger appears when this operating leverage is combined with another kind of leverage: debt. And few stories demonstrate that better than Cineworld. In 2017, Cineworld agreed to acquire Regal Entertainment in the United States for $3.6 billion in cash, with an implied enterprise value around $5.8 billion. The deal transformed Cineworld into the world's second-largest cinema operator. More screens, more markets, more customers, more scale. It looked like exactly what a growing theater company was supposed to do. But even before anything went catastrophically wrong, there were warnings. One major Cineworld shareholder publicly expressed discomfort with the amount of debt being taken on for the Regal acquisition. Then the company pushed further. In December 2019, Cineworld agreed to acquire Canada's Cineplex for $1.65 billion in cash, valuing the transaction at roughly $2.1 billion, including debt. Reuters reported that Cineworld planned to seek around $2.3 billion in loans connected with the deal. 3 months later, the basic assumptions supporting the entire theater machine collapsed. Customers disappeared. By April 2020, all 787 Cineworld cinemas across 10 countries had been closed during the COVID-19 pandemic. No audience meant almost no normal ticket revenue. But remember what we established earlier. No ticket buyer also means no popcorn buyer, no premium screen upgrade, no drink, no customer around whom the rest of the economics can be built. And while revenue can disappear almost overnight, debt and lease obligations do not disappear nearly as politely. Cineworld abandoned the Cineplex transaction, but its financial pressure continued. Eventually, theaters reopened. That should have fixed the problem. Except reopening the building is not enough if there are not enough movies capable of filling it. By August 2022, Cineworld was warning that lower-than-expected admissions, partly because of a limited film slate, would pressure its finances. Then came the consequence. In September 2022, Cineworld filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the United States as it attempted to restructure roughly $5 billion of debt. COVID was obviously an extraordinary shock. But simply saying the pandemic bankrupted a cinema company misses the more important lesson. The shock was devastating because it hit a business already built around fixed obligations, borrowed money, and attendance that the company could influence but could never completely control. The pandemic removed customers. Delayed movies slowed their return. Debt amplified the damage. Leases kept the pressure alive. And even after Cineworld emerged from Chapter 11 with reduced debt, the story was not finished. Its 2024 UK restructuring again focused heavily on cinema leases and rental terms. Years after the theaters reopened, property commitments were still important enough to require restructuring. That is the movie theater business stripped of the red carpets. Not glamorous premieres. Fixed costs versus seat utilization. Of course, that does not mean owning a theater is automatically a bad business. The same operating leverage that hurts on the way down can become powerful on the way up. If rent is already due and the theater is already staffed, putting more customers through the doors can spread those costs across far more revenue. A strong location with sensible rent, reliable traffic, disciplined staffing, good concession spending, and premium experiences can work extremely well. A realistic, successful theater will be less spectacular. Some movies will fail. Some weekdays will be quiet. Management will obsess over labor hours, ticket pricing, food waste, membership, show schedules, maintenance, and how much every customer spends after entering. A struggling theater begins looking different. Attendance falls. Management raises prices to compensate. Customers visit less often or stop buying concessions. The owner postpones upgrades. The experience becomes less compelling compared with home entertainment. Attendance weakens further. Then add expensive debt or an unfavorable lease, and a temporary problem can become structural. That is why the most important number in a cinema may not be the price printed on the ticket. It may be how much economic value each auditorium produces during the limited hours available to sell it. Which brings us back to the 10-screen theater. At first, it looked as though Hollywood did the difficult part. They made the movies. They hired the stars. They bought the advertising. They created the demand. You simply opened the doors and sold tickets. But now we can see the trade. Hollywood may create the demand, but it also keeps part of the ticket. The theater carries the building. The theater carries the labor. The theater carries the empty seats. The theater carries the lease. And when somebody finally walks through the door, the operator has a short window to turn that visit into enough revenue to support everything waiting behind it. So owning a movie theater is not fundamentally a bet on whether people love movies. People clearly do. It is a bet on whether you can keep expensive, perishable screen time valuable using films you do not own, demand you do not fully control, and customers who can always choose to stay home. The movie is what appears on the screen. The real product is the occupied seat.